the associative, creative, and evolutional levels of deity activity in time and space. Partly because of their successful efforts in the evolutionary universes, the Supreme Being is slowly evolving, emerging as experiential deity, evolutional deity. We have traced the expansion of the action of total deity from the static through the potential to the associative level. In the previous chapter, we observed God the Sevenfold enter upon the fourth level, the creative level. And now we observe deity functioning on the fifth level of activity, the evolutional level. The Supreme Being is evolving. He starts out in the second age as a spirit person in Havona, and then he begins to grow, to evolve, as the Supreme Creators are successful in perfecting their imperfect creations, including worlds like the one we now live on. The successes of the Supreme Creators and their coordinates, associates, and subordinates are like many springs and brooks that converge into streams, which merge into larger streams, that in turn become the great tributaries of a mighty river. This mighty river of divinity success in time and space is something which is called the experiential power of the Almighty. Like our mighty river flowing into the sea, this inflowing and converging power of the Almighty unites with the spirit person of the Supreme in Havona. This is the source of the growth of the sovereign power of the Supreme, who starts out as a spirit person with no sovereign power at all, and is gradually growing, evolving, as the experiential sovereign of the seven superuniverses. Even the Supreme Creators themselves evolve. They participate in the growth process of the second age. This is particularly true of the Creator sons and the creative spirits, but it is probably also true of the entire core of the Supreme Creators. The big difference between creation and evolution is the factor of time. Creation takes place without the passage of time, in an instant. Evolution slows down the transformative process to the point where creatures can understand what is going on, and can participate in it, can play a conscious part in their own growth. In this way, man and other creatures can go into partnership with God. Man can become a conscious partner with God in the evolution of himself as he is to be. Interaction of levels. The Supreme Being is not just a passive recipient of all this effort. He is personally active in doing something about his own growth and evolution. He is reaching back to the creative and the associative levels of total deity function to actualize the potentials of the paradise deities. He is expressing his own emerging will and purpose in distributing himself to the time-space creations. In doing this, he is slowly making himself real as he expands into the evolutionary universes and identifies himself with all creature growth and with all growing creatures. Section 3. The emptiness of imperfection, growth capacity. We who are native to the second age take evolutionary growth and finite experience as a matter of course. It is all that we know. But from a larger perspective, it is something that is quite peculiar to and unique in the present universe age. This is the age of the growth of the Supreme. He is growing just as we are growing. He grows by virtue of our growth, and we are able to grow because we are growing inside of him. We are a part of his growth. In a way, we might think of the grand universe as the arena in which the Supreme Being is evolving. And almost everything in this arena is evolving along with him. We grow in him, and he grows in us. It is a two-way proposition. This is the age in which it is possible to have finite experience. The Supreme Being is growing in finite experience. Other ages will provide for experience, but it will not be finite. It may be post-finite or super-finite, but it will certainly be other than finite. This is because the growth of the Supreme is something that is limited to the second age, the present age. When this process has been completed, he will emerge as a deity that we can all perceive and know. Then his evolutionary growth will have come to an end, and so will the possibility to participate in it, the possibility to have finite experience. Human beings start out at the very bottom of finite creature existence. They start out as super animals and have a chance to ascend by evolutionary growth to the heights of finaliter status. We start out the lowest of all, hence our opportunity is the greatest. We start out with the least, hence our growth can embrace the most. The virtue of an empty vessel is that it can be filled. So said Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching. The virtue of imperfection is that it can be filled with the experience of consciously growing into a state of perfection. The imperfection of the time-space creations provides the possibility for this kind of growth. Had they been created in perfection, the super-universes would have been nothing more than an extension of the central creation, Havona all over again, but on a larger scale. And this super-universe need, this very lack of perfection, gives the Paradise Havona personalities the opportunity for new growth in their enlarged service as they try to help us reach the divine heights of perfection from which they have descended. Section 4. The challenge of power-personality unification. The pattern of growth in the second age is set by the Supreme himself. He derives his power as the almighty sovereign of the super-universes from the activities and the successes of the supreme creators and all the inhabitants of the time-space universes. If the acts of these beings are evil, then growth is thwarted. If such acts are good, then growth is augmented. The time-space growth of the Supreme depends on the inflowing power of the Almighty. This converging power is united with the spirit person of the Supreme in Havona by the action of the mind endowment of the Supreme. And this is the important fact. Power is united with and subjected to the control of spirit personality by the unifying action of mind. This growth principle, power personality synthesis, is encountered many times in the papers. Power personality synthesis is a transaction that takes place because of a certain set of conditions which obtain in the time-space universes. In these domains, it appears that energy matter has been given a head start. It is dominant. Spirit is striving to become dominant, but spirit alone is impotent. Spirit does not actually touch matter at any point. It takes mind to achieve the mastery of physical reality. And only that mind, which is also personal, possesses the power to choose to subordinate itself to spirit, even while achieving the mastery of energy matter. But if such an energy mastering mind does not choose to be spirit-led, then it can never succeed, persist, and survive in the long run. As an example of this, just consider the state of affairs in our world today. We have achieved a considerable mastery over the forces and the secrets of nature, and we are afraid. The question has sometimes been raised, how can the meek ever inherit the earth? Well, the answer is simple enough. No one but the meek possibly could and keep the inheritance. Of course, such meek persons would have to be very strong persons to start out with. And if such persons of great strength were also meek, then their strength would not make anyone afraid. When the strong are not meek, then it is that their strength begets fear. And it is this fear of unbridled strength that sooner or later causes the gathering together of an even greater counter-strength through the formation of a confederacy of those who fear. Strength, power, without spirit leading or spirit's restraint begets fear. And those who fear will in due time so combine together as to destroy the strong. The growth challenge of the present age seems to be just this. Can we use mind to master the problems of the physical creation, and at the same time subject this victorious mind to the over-control of spirit by the power of personality choice? If we can do this, then we may become both strong and meek. Such a matter-dominating and spirit-affiliated mind is beginning to strike step with the unfolding of the evolutionary movements of the universes, which is to say, we will have become relatively successful in our efforts to do the will of God. Section 5, Challenge and Response. The papers tell us that there are 3 keys to the kingdom of heaven: sincerity, sincerity, and more sincerity. And that we make progress in the kingdom by decisions, by more decisions, and by more decisions. These instructions seem to place a high premium first on honesty, then on courage, on moral strength of character. The exercise of moral courage, the making of moral decisions, can lead only to the development of moral strength. Those who gain entrance into the kingdom must be honest of heart, and those who are progressing in the kingdom must be growing in moral strength. To what does this strength, this moral strength, lead? If such strength turn inward to the self, then all is lost. It can become at best no more than ethical. But if such strength turn inward to man's spirit nucleus, to the adjuster, then all is gained. Then can the moral transcend the ethical in reaching for the spiritual. The reaching out for spiritual values, the quest for God, is an act caused by a feeling of need that is born of hunger in a human heart. Such hunger is begotten by the realization of smallness, by the feeling of humility. Out of such humility, out of this realization of human limitations, comes a surging and questing hunger to know the will of God and to find some way to do this will. This is the victory of meekness over pride, when a strong man, not a weak man, contemplates the comparative virtues of the will of man and the will of God. With the moral strength that comes from decision action, and with honest feelings of humility and hunger and meekness, a human being could begin to aspire to levels of real and rare understanding, levels of relative wisdom, and of a kindly sophistication that could be completely anti-cynical. Such a human being could begin to be intelligently trustful of God. And such a wise and childlike faith is something very different from the blind presumptuousness of an ignorant and childish faith. The insights of an anti-cynical sophistication could generate a discerning tender-heartedness, a responsiveness to human problems and to human needs that would be something much more than mere sentimentality. Of course, in becoming responsive to human need, the discerning person has laid himself wide open to pain. The capacity to feel human need is the same capacity that can feel pain, that can mourn the tragedies of life. At about this time in the maturing process of the human being, the qualities of tenderness, humility, and anti-cynical sophistication could all meld together into the heightened insights of a rich humor, a genuine capacity to laugh at oneself and to laugh with, but not at, one's fellow men. A realization, however dim, of the infinity of God, coupled with an acute awareness of the finite smallness of man, can contribute greatly to the growth of humor, a humor that can be turned inward upon the self and especially directed toward the ever-hungry ego and pride of a normal human being. Given such self-directed humor, humor turned inward is a check on ego exaltation. It becomes easier for a human being to live with himself, and by laughing often at himself, to learn to live at peace with himself. Such a maturing person, a person who has intelligently wedded humor and wisdom to sympathy and understanding, is one who can give effective comfort, and in the giving, create in himself the capacity to receive and to benefit from the same ministration of understanding. Such kindly and sophisticated understanding could serve as the foundation for true mercy. We are instructed that mercy is not a simple thing. Mercy grows out of justice and fairness and patience and kindness. Such mercy is truly love in action. But this love in action is a love that has become wise and discerning by virtue of the insights of experience. Love in action is mercy, and mercy applied is ministry. Ministry may be effective or it may be ineffective, all depending on the content of wisdom, as well as the quality of selflessness in the underlying motivation of love. The act of giving enlarges the capacity to receive, regardless of the wisdom or the effectiveness of the giver. But the art of giving may require the full use of all human resources of wisdom and humor and experience and love. If the giving is to be really effective, actually constructive, and genuinely helpful, true and beautiful, as well as good. An unwise giver may himself reap the spirit benefits of sincere but ineffective giving. But what of the plight of the needy one who profits not from this unartful ministry? The effective and constructive giver is engaged in a ministry of positive action. He is becoming responsive and understanding in his giving. He is becoming an active and beneficial force among his fellow men. He is a bringer of goodwill. He is an ameliorator of difficulties, a reconciler of contentions. He is actively waging peace among his fellows. Such a strong and loving and wise person is becoming unafraid to live on earth as a citizen of a greater kingdom, even as a universe-conscious citizen. The attempt to live this kind of life may lead to trouble and contention, even to pain. But such a human being will not shrink from these challenges to inner courage, challenges which test the quality and endurance of his humor, challenges to his very highest convictions of truth and beauty and goodness. Albeit, such strong feelings of inner assurance could be humanly safe only if they were associated with sincerity and humility, only if they are governed by the urge of honesty and constrained by the realization of smallness, and especially held in check by the ego-controlling ministry of an active sense of humor. Perhaps this is why Jesus said what he said at the ordination of the 12. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And he closed his address to the 12 with a ninth statement concerning the human response to God's challenge to man. Blessed are you when men revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for so men persecuted the prophets who were before you. God's challenge to man is not something vaporous and rosy and distant and theoretical. This study submits that God's challenge is the most real thing that a human being can possibly know in this lifetime. And what do we do about this challenge? What is our response? As we respond successfully to God's challenge, we grow. And this growth is not something that is projected into the far, far future of the distant events of the sixth universe age and the Cortan space level. This is a here and now challenge, and our responses to it are here and now, and our growth as a result of successful responses is also here and now. God inhabits eternity, and like the eternal God, his challenge is timeless, utterly divorced from the past future of time. It is an ever-present challenge in the everlasting present moment of now. We respond to God's challenge, not by regrets concerning the past, not by resolutions concerning the future, but by decision, by action in the now of time. The Universal Father has equipped each one of us royally. He has endowed us with all the attributes and powers necessary to respond to his challenge. He has invested us with the priceless powers of choice that accompany his gift of personality. He has entrusted to our custody a small portion, an adjuster fragment of his own unfathomable nature, to serve as our spirit nucleus and as our pilot to paradise. And having thus endowed us richly, he challenges us greatly, and then abides patiently to see what we will do with what we have in view of what he has done. From each of us he asks for all that we have. But this all is always in proportion to our capacity to give. To one he says, be a good shepherd, feed my sheep. To another one he may say, be diligent and faithful in the doing of whatever work you can best do. To some he asks, do you love me? Of others he queries, do you trust me? Of one he may question, do you serve me? Of another he may inquire, do you obey me? And of yet another he may ask, do you believe in me? Always is the challenge personalized and individualized, not a challenge to all men, but a challenge to each man. And always is it made in terms of the individual capabilities and needs of the particular individual that God is personally challenging. Always does God's challenge take note of the man, in what manner he was born. In brief, God has enriched us, and he is challenging us to invest our talents with profit to ourselves and to his creation. But most of all, he is challenging us with love, with an infinite love that is all but blinding in the intensity of its manifestation. And the question that confronts us and every other free will being in the second universe age is a very simple one. What are we going to do about this love? This love that we can feel even without understanding it. What are we going to do about it, here and now?
You have adequately answered your own question that you asked.
What
an hour ago.
What is the number then?
It's page 50. What?
No, I mean, what is the number of this particular?
Oh, it's the last section in chapter 3, challenge and response.
Bill, you remember when you said, well, I feel I am capable of writing clearly?
Yeah.
I wonder whether I can write beautifully. You answered your own question.
Well, that's my religion on paper.
You answered.
That's the hardest thing I've written in the whole story. This is what I believe.
I can hear, feel, and see Bill Sadler and that all the way through.
Well, it's the most comforting and most terrifying religion you could possibly have.
When you improve on this,
You're not going to improve on that.
That's probably pretty close to the way it'll be. I agree with you.
I blow the whistle on anybody who's trying to improve on that.
I'd like to ask one question in there. Do you identify or define sin, evil sin and equity
No.
in that book? Well, if a stranger to the ranch book reads that, they'll have an entire different concept of evil sin.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will.
Well, Captain, they cannot get they cannot reverse or in any way entangle the three if they listen. I mean, if they read.
I've said that
They're
insincerity,
intensifying.
that creature choice transforms potential evil into actual evil. Then insincerity can transmute it into sin, even iniquity.
Even. I mean, it's step by step. And there's no way.
That's the hardest thing I've ever written in my life. And I've had it in mind for a long, long time, and I just dreaded to start writing it.
Let's see what's in there.
Well,
It shows the results of lots of thoughtful work. No question about it.
that's my religion.
But it's the most beautiful religion I ever heard.
It's the most comforting and most terrifying religion a man could ever have. Because you feel so sure on the one hand and you're so unsure on the other. And I think that's better to be that way. Because if you think you got it made, you could be awful smug. And I think maybe that's the best way for a creature critter like a human being to feel. You're pretty sure that you're going to make it all right, but let's not leave anything to chance. I kind of get a kick out of going back to some of this I've looked at for a long time. Chapter 3.
this went to chapter 3.
We're starting chapter 3 now. First synthesis of the Supreme. Shoot.
One question. Not this, but this before that. Even though, and notwithstanding, the Supreme is uncontactable at the present, he is resident
In Havana.
in Havana, and is he a personalized being today, now?
I can't answer that. I'm not sure.
Well, quit.
I think he's a becoming personality. He derives.
Deity now.
He's deity.
He's got to be.
He's
deity
evolutionary
now.
deity. And in one place they speak of him as being a spirit person. In another place they speak of him as existing during the pre-personal era of power personality mobilization. In another place they say that he gets his spirit characteristic as a person from the Paradise Trinity. And the best analogy I can draw is the slow personalization of a creative spirit in a local universe. I think if you could rise above time, you'd see him as a person right now.
But thanks so much.
Michael always looks at his creative consort as a person, but then Michael is capable of a timeless appraisal. When Michael loved human beings, I'll swear he must have seen finaliters there. because God knows we aren't that lovable, you know. But Mike could look ahead and see what a man could be. He could think outside of time. Now, if we could think outside of time, we'd see the Supreme Being as a person right now.
Well, to deity, to other deities,
To Mike,
he's a
he'll-
personal deity.
Sure he is.
Today.
To the seventh master spirit, he is right now.
Thank you.
But not to us.
No.
He's a becoming person to us. I think of him as resident on the 6th Avona Circuit, because that's where they tell us that he does the most for us when we go through Havona. I think it's on the 6th Circuit of Havona we make our nearest approach to the Supreme Being. I think we almost find him, but not quite.
Yet he synthesized on that.
Yeah. He synthesizes on the pilot world of the 7th. Well, we come the closest to him on the 6th Circuit. That's where they say that they can tell he's there because of what's happening to us. And they just say we couldn't make that progress all alone. But he's trying to give us the last Simonized job that we can take to get ready to pass muster on paradise.
Now, it is obvious to Berkeley that she can't contact the Universal Father, and she accepts him as one person of deity.
Yes.
Now, just because she can't contact the Supreme Being, she doesn't want his sympathy.
I have a feeling for the Supreme Being. I have a feeling.
Too many arguments.
I have this feeling for the Supreme Being. I know that theoretically the Eternal Son could look in a fraternal way toward me, because he is an absolute Son of God, and I am a creature Son of God. But that is a little too remote to mean too much to me. He's an infinite being. But I have a real bona fide feeling of fraternity for the Supreme Being. He starts in time just like I did. He evolves in time just like I did. He's dependent on a spirit nucleus, the Trinity, just as I'm dependent on a non-personal spirit nucleus, the adjuster. He struggles. He experiences setbacks. I don't think he backslides, but I think he experiences temporary defeats where he has to fall back and regroup and go in again. I think the Supreme Being can work up a sweat, so to speak. And I have a feeling of kinship for the Supreme. And the papers tell me that someday in outer space, as a finaliter, we will be able to portray the Supreme Being to the folks out there just as naturally and normally as Jesus was able to portray the Father down here on earth, because we will be flesh of his flesh and bone of his bone. We'll be like him. We'll really be technically, factually, sons of the Supreme as well as sons of the Father. We're sons of the Father because of a juster inheritance. He gives that to us. But we earn our sonship with the Supreme Being. We couldn't earn sonship with the Father. We accept it as a free gift. But we can sweat out our fraternity with the Supreme Being. In the last analysis, factually, God does not need me. He'd miss me only because he's loved me. But factually, the Supreme Being needs me in an infinitesimal sense of the word.
One clock mark.
That's right. Collectively, he needs all of us. Collectively, he's up Salt Creek without a paddle if we all fail him. The only reason no one of us is too important is because there's so many of us. I have a real feeling for the Supreme Being. I have a feeling of loyalty. It's a challenge. You're going to let him down. The papers talk on that at considerable length in their discussion in the paper on God the Supreme, and about next to the last section, as I recall. Will you fail the great brother of all creatures? Will you let yourself slip into nothingness and let some other creature, in his way, do the job that you should have done the best? Chapter 3. First synthesis, God the Supreme. At this point in our study, we are passing from the past and the present into the future of time. In many parts of our ensuing study, however, it may be convenient to treat then current events as though they were present events. We will on occasion use the present tense to describe happenings that are current in the chapter concerned, and in the same context, we will speak of earlier chapters in the past tense and of later chapters in the future tense. This adaptation of the present tense will not be uniformly followed because there are some situations in which it would be quite awkward. I thought I'd better apologize for my misuse of grammar because later on, if you don't move the present up to date, you can't compare things. You get into so many verbs in there. What I need is I need not only a future and a future perfect, but I need a future perfected perfect. And there is no such form in English. It seems reasonable to assume that there is a quiet time between universe ages, just as there is a quiet zone between adjacent space levels. If this is the case, then we may properly consider the full attainment of evolutionary destiny at the end of the second age without complicating this survey by having to reckon with events which have to do with the opening phases of the next age. During such a quiet time, at the closing of the present universe age, the grand universe is experiencing the satisfaction of completed growth, attained destiny. The long evolutionary effort and travail has finally won through to experiential victory. The Supreme Creators have met the challenge of Havona perfection, and the end result is 700,000 perfected local universes, culminating in the settling of the 7 super-universes in light and life. In a certain sense, the time-space creations are resting on their oars. For the duration of this quiet time, the grand universe is a self-contained and self-sufficient creation, something like Havona in the first age. This is the time when creators and creatures can taste the sweetness of goals attained. This is the momentary pause in the eternal growth of creation, when satisfaction displaces effort and consummation for the moment takes precedence over the never-ending challenge of growth. The whole grand universe is pausing in time to consolidate its achievements and to complete its unification under the new sovereignty of the newly emerged experiential deity of finite existences, the Supreme Being. Section 1. The emergence of the Supreme Being. The event that brings the second universe age to the zenith and culmination of all finite growth is the final emergence of the Supreme Being as the experiential sovereign of the perfected super-universes. This means that this hitherto unapproachable deity has become approachable and contactable by all creatures. This encounter should be fruitful and satisfying, both to deity and to creatures. God the Father is infinite and will always be a mystery to us. But God the Supreme is finite and is therefore comprehensible to finite creatures. Since all finite creatures have evolved with and within this finite deity, there is a real and factual experiential kinship which serves as the basis for mutuality of understanding. Supreme Deity. At this point in our study, we are encountering a new level of the function of total deity. We have been making careful note of these levels as we have encountered them. We first took note of the static level, then the potential and the associative level, and then the creative and the evolution levels. We are now at a point where we can examine the 6th level, the supreme level. The first 3 levels are pre-creative, static, potential, and associative. They might be likened to the levels on which deity unfolded and prepared for the adventure of expansion into time and space. The next two levels are outgoing, creative and evolutional. On these levels, God, deity, is distributing himself to all creation. He is revealing himself to the universes. He is expanding outward into the post-Havona realms. He is going into partnership with his creatures, actually identifying himself with some of them through the indwelling of his spirit, the adjuster. The activities of deity on these outgoing levels are perhaps best disclosed in the ministry of God the Sevenfold. Now on the sixth level, the supreme level, we observe an incoming, a gathering together of that which has been poured out upon all creation. The supreme is the first great synthesis, the putting together of the thesis of perfection and the antithesis of imperfection. Imperfection, which by evolutionary growth has achieved a perfected status. On this level, even deity is experiential. On this level, God and man can become one, as in the natures of the Paradise Bestowal Sun. Section 2. Synthesis on the creature level of existence. However difficult it may be to visualize these events of the remote future, we may in principle examine the same type of synthesis that is taking place right now with respect to certain types of creatures. We have noted that Havona provides the original thesis of perfection. The antithesis of this is the imperfection of the superuniverses, and this original imperfection can become perfected through evolutionary growth. Can we now find an example of the synthesis of the perfected and the perfect on creature level? Such a synthesis could take place between two creatures in the trinitizing union of a finaliter and a Havona native. Can the reader think of anyone more unlike a perfect Havona native than some unwashed and unkept cave dweller on some primitive planet? And yet, that primitive man could be adjuster indwelt, could exhibit perfection hunger, could survive, ascend to paradise, and be mustered into the core of the finality. And as a finaliter, he might join some native of Havona in the adventure of trinitization and experience actual union, spiritual biunification with that Havona native. This would be a very literal synthesis of the perfect, of the perfected and the perfect. But there will always be a difference between the perfect nature of eternal existence and the perfected nature of experiential attainment. The attitude of the perfect Havoner might possibly be expressed as, things work, they always work. Why would they be any different? The attitude of the perfected ascender might be expressed as, things work because we have learned how to make them work, and it used to be very different. The completed grand universe. All during the long period of evolutionary growth in the second age, each superuniverse has developed entirely on its own, under the unique influence of one of the master spirits. These master spirits are uniquely diverse in nature because they personalize the 7 possible combinations, singular and plural, of the 3 paradise deities. In the illustration facing this page, we have symbolized the unique nature of each master spirit by an arrangement of 3 circles. These 3 circles are so drawn that there are 7 areas. 3 areas where there is no overlap, 3 areas where there is a double overlap, and 1 area that has a triple overlap. This is a reasonably good symbol for the master spirits, just as the 3 concentric circles is a meaningful symbol for the 3 persons of deity in and as the Paradise Trinity. Divergence and convergence. Each master spirit is unique in nature, since each spirit pervades and dominates the entire environment of one superuniverse. It follows that each superuniverse and its native beings are also unique. It follows that each superuniverse and its native beings are also unique. They are forever stamped with the individual nature and character of the supervising Master Spirit. Each superuniverse would also tend to develop its own distinctive culture, its own unique civilization. With the emergence of the Supreme Being as the sovereign of all the superuniverses, the barriers that have separated the supercreations during the Second Age are going to be removed. Then, for the first time, all seven can function as a single unit, as an administrative and cultural whole. This intermingling of all seven cultures should result in a new stimulus to further growth. We would identify this transaction as a good illustration of the principle of divergence and convergence. Growth is first encouraged to become individualistic and distinctive by divergence, and then in the fullness of time, all that has developed in relative isolation is brought together and finally consolidated. This is an interesting parallel to what happens in the development of a normal inhabited world. First, the 6 evolutionary races are encouraged to diverge, to go their separate ways. While so isolated, each race tends to develop its own unique culture of civilization. Later in planetary development, all 6 races and cultures are blended with the Edenic peoples and the Edenic civilization. As an example of references which I'm skipping, see Appendix 4, Section 5b, the Superuniverses in Light and Life, Section 6a, Local Universes in Light and Life, Appendix 14, Section 1, the Principles of Divergence Convergence, Section 3, Superuniverse Administration, Present and Future. These, I hope, will intrigue the reader. Section 4, Creative Associations of Dual Deity. We have noted the principle of divergence and convergence. This originally reads, we have noted the principle of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, because these used to be a long ways away from here when I first drafted the story. We have noted the principle of divergence and convergence. We should take notice at this point of another principle. Certain creative associations of dual deity appear to be of prime importance in certain of the universe ages. In the first age, the significant association of dual deity was that of the Father-Son. The union of the Father and Son trinitizes the infinite Spirit and eternalizes the central universe of perfection. In the second age, the significant association of dual deity appears to be the working partnership of the Son and the Spirit. We are informed that the Spirit sustains the same relation to the Son in the post-Avona creations that the Son sustains to the Father in the central creation. But the active cooperation between the Son and the Spirit does not seem to be taking place on Paradise, so much as in the local universes and in the collaboration of the Creator Sons and the creative spirits, the creators, organizers, and perfecters of these evolutionary domains. The result of the Father-Son association is the appearance of the infinite Spirit and Havona. What will be the final results of 700,000 Son-Spirit partnerships in time and space? Section 5, Son and Spirit in the Second Universe Age. The event which terminates the Zero Age and begins the First Universe Age is the trinitizing union of the Father and the Son that produces the infinite Spirit and the central universe of perfection. We are informed that in the Second Age, the Spirit has the same relationship to the Son that the Son in the first age has to the Father. If this is the case, then what will result from such a Son-Spirit partnership? Does this mean some new liaison between the eternal Son and the infinite Spirit on paradise? We think not. The observable partnership between the Son and the Spirit is not being worked out on paradise. It is seemingly being worked out in time and space and in the local universes. The paradise Son and Spirit are going into partnership in the persons of their universe sons and spirits, the creators and organizers of the local universes. The Father-Son union is an existential relationship and is an eternity event taking place on paradise. The Son-Spirit unions are experiential relationships and are time events taking place in space. The dual deity partnership of the second age could result in the trinitizing unions of 700,000 universe sons and spirits sometime following the establishment of all local universes in light and life. But the trinitizing episode that begins the first age will probably not find its analog until the close of the second age. It is not until the very end of the second age that the local universes will have achieved a perfected status that is finitely comparable to the eternal perfection of the central creation. A. The evolution of Creator Sons. If we go back again to the zero age, we may observe that the eternal Son is a fully personal being before the times of Havona. A Creator Son is also a fully personal being before his local universe is even started, much less settled in light and life. This means that the entire evolutionary growth of a Michael, even his pre-creator experience of training, is as a personal being. A sevenfold Creator Son, a Master Michael, is experientially much more than what he was when he first appeared on paradise as a new Creator Son of the Universal Father and the Eternal Son. In his work of organizing and perfecting his local universe, he has experienced much. In his 7 bestowals in the likeness of his creatures, he has added much to his nature that was not a part of his original endowment of paradise divinity. A Master Michael still personifies that original and individual thesis of divinity that was jointly conceived by the Paradise Father and Son, and which gave him origin. He has added to this original endowment all of his acquired experiential nature, and this encompasses the antithesis of paradise divinity, for it is drawn out of the evolutionary imperfection of the time-space creation. A Master Michael has had experience with the imperfections inherent in the evolutionary growth of his own creatures. He knows what it is like to be a creature. His complex and composite nature includes the nature of the creature, even as Joshua ben Joseph still lives in Michael of Nevada. In his personal synthesis of these opposite, antithetical qualities, such a Master Michael becomes akin to and is expressive of the experiential divinity of the Supreme Being. The Supreme Being is the finite deity synthesis of an original spirit personality of Havona perfection, plus the attained experiential sovereignty of the 7 superuniverses, imperfection evolving into a perfected estate. B. The evolution of creative spirits. If we return once again to the zero age, we may observe that the infinite Spirit is not yet a personality, and that the Spirit attains personality status by functioning as a cooperative creator in the actualizing of Havona. A creative daughter of the infinite Spirit, a creative spirit, earns personality status in like manner by working as a cooperative creator in the perfecting of her local universe. The fiat appearance of Havona is an eternity event, and the infinite spirit likewise achieves personal status as an eternity event, simultaneously with the appearance of perfect Havona. The evolutionary perfection of a local universe is a time event, and its creative spirit likewise achieves personality status as a time event when her local universe, and perhaps all others, is settled in light and life. Each creative being thus resembles the universe, in the creation of which each achieves personality status. All of this means that the early training and local universe experiences of the creative spirits are as pre-personal beings. In this respect, their evolutionary growth is very unlike that of the personal growth experiences of the associated creator sons. The present growth limit of a creative spirit appears to be the 6th stage of being. Such a matured spirit is experientially quite different from a first stage colleague, one that has just differentiated within the infinite spirit in response to the concurrent birth of the complemental creator son. The growth of a universe spirit adds the experiential natures, the growth of a universe son adds the experiential natures of time-space creatures to the original endowment of paradise divinity. The growth of a universe spirit adds the experience of achieving experiential personality in time, of personalizing the original focalization of the infinite spirit that is the segregated presence of a new creative spirit. The universe sons and spirits both grow. They both evolve. The growth of each, however, is very different from that of the other. Because it is so very different, it should be highly complementary and may likely encompass all growth that is possible to a creative being in the second universe age. C. The Sun-Spirit Union. The trinitizing union of the universe sons and spirits is without precedent. Not since the universal Father and the eternal Son united in the trinitizing of the conjoined actor have two creators produced a third being who is their equal in creative nature and creator attributes. This union of the universe sons and spirits must likely await the close of the second age, or even the beginning of the third. It will probably not take place until after all 700,000 local universes have been settled in light and life. The trinitizing union of the local universe sons and spirits would transform their dual deity association into a triune relationship. The duo would become a trio by the appearance of a coordinate third being, an associate creator of coordinate status. We have elected to name such a triune association a Sun-Spirit Creative Trio. The newly appearing associate creator would be expressive of 1. The original paradise divinity endowment of the creator Son and the creative spirit. 2. The experience of organizing and perfecting the local universe on the part of the universe Son and Spirit. 3. The experiential creature natures which the creator Son has acquired in the course of his 7 bestowals. 4. The experiential personality status of the creative spirit which she has acquired as a cooperating creator. 5. The superadditive consequence of the union of the creator Son and the creative spirit. Such a third being might be provisionally subordinate in sovereignty, but could in many ways be the most versatile in action. I'm paraphrasing what they say about the infinite spirit here in relation to the Father Son. This associate creator might disclose attributes of an ultimate nature. We forecast that the Sun-Spirit creative trios are going to play an important part in the opening up of the primary space level and in the further development of all the universes of outer space. Well, dear people, you've heard the epilogue and the first story. Are you tired? You
Read
aren't.
the prologue.
You're the prologue.
Don't scare me like
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to, it's a fair sample of what I'm trying to do. And what we need help, what I need help to do.
Well, I think you've done a mighty good job there.
Not good enough
As far as
yet.
you went. We've got to go home and do our chores. What time are you gonna continue?
Who's the boss here?
He's,
What time you want to?
I'd say.
you're the boss, Bill.
No, I'm not. I just work here.
First opportunity I've had. What do you think about 7:30?
Whatever you say, Bert. What time is it now?
About 7:30 I expect, don't y'all imagine?
7:30.
Fine, and that'll help y'all. You can like get home and back, can't you? You can come back and eat with us. We would see that standard. Oh, I got
Turn it on. Yes. In discussing the nature of Avona, the Havona creation is, this is page 161, near the bottom of the page, under where they have the caption, paragraph heading Spring Being. The Havona creation is the eternal and perfect proof of the spiritual reality of the Supreme Being. This perfect creation is a revelation of the perfect and symmetrical spirit nature of God the Supreme before the beginnings of the power personality synthesis of the finite reflections of the paradise deities in the experiential universes of time and space. Now he starts out not as a personality of power. He starts out as a spirit being, and he has a spiritual influence. And this is the primary function of the Supreme Being, and it's limited to the central universe. His secondary function is as a personality of power. And here he has a grand universe function. And he's going to be the sovereign someday, and that is power. Now he's got a tertiary function that's master universe in scope. And they aren't too certain what it is. They say it could be any one of three things. It could be he's going to be a super almighty out in outer space, or it could be an unknown potential of mind. I think it's going to be both. And then they say it involves something, has something to do with a third level of deity manifestation. Oh, I think that's he's hooked up with the ultimate, the trinitization of God the Absolute. Because God the Absolute is the third level of experiential deity manifestation as I read the papers. I can't improve on that illustration from optics. And I put it in the appendices. I hesitate to put it in the story because it gets complicated. I think I'd rather just let him be derived from the Trinity and then refer the reader back to the appendices for further information. But that to me is another illustration of divergence, convergence.
Well, I thought maybe it might be derived from from the Spirit.
No, it's from the Trinity.
From the Trinity.
He gets his mind from the Spirit. The mind of the Supreme comes from the infinite
It would
Spirit.
be then Trinitized creation or something. Would it be?
Then they aren't too specific. They just aren't specific. If I had to compare it with anything, I would say The Supreme Being, the spirit person of the Supreme, sustains a relationship to the Paradise Trinity, which is somewhat like the relationship of an early creative spirit to the infinite spirit. It's a kind of a focalization. The Supreme Being is not the Trinity on the finite level, but the Supreme Being is the Trinity is comprehended by finite creatures on the finite level. In other words, if we want to say, but the Trinity has got to be a person, then they're going to say, all right, now you think of the person of the Supreme Being. The Supreme Being is the personalization of the Trinity, which you can understand. And then they'll warn us and say, but not quite, but the best that you can come. In the same way, God the Ultimate is the personalization of the Trinity, which the Transcendentalers can comprehend, and which someday we will comprehend, or seek to comprehend. I get my best, I think I've got this in here. This will be in, Appendix 14. The principle of divergence, convergence. It would appear that we have here encountered another of the basic principles that seem to govern the unfolding of the creative pattern of the Master Universe. This is the principle of divergence, convergence, resulting in the production of a new diversification of meanings and values. If we go back to the origin of the Master Spirits, we may see this principle in its original form. Pre-Father Deity starts out as the personality of infinity. From this is subtracted the absolute person of the Son. This results in the appearance of two deities and constitutes a divergence from the original unity. The two deities then converge in the production of the third person, who is in nature something different from either ancestral being. Here we have unity which diverges and then converges with the resulting production of something new. When we consider the undivided deity of the Paradise Trinity in relation to the seven Master Spirits, we observe another divergence, this time a sevenfold diversification. Here we may draw upon optics for a simple illustration. If white light is passed through a prism, it can be broken down into a chromatic scale ranging from red through the seven colors to indigo. If these seven colors are recombined, they will reproduce the white light. Suppose that we visualize the Trinity as the source of white light. The seven Master Spirits symbolize the seven chromatic components of white light. Now let us further visualize two screens, a finite screen and an absonite screen. When the rainbow pattern of the Master Spirits is recombined and projected on the finite screen, it appears as the Supreme Being, the personalization of the Trinity to the finite. When it is recombined and projected on the absonite screen, it appears as God the Ultimate, the personalization of the Trinity to the absonite. The Supreme and the Ultimate thus seem to be power personalizing those experiential values of deity that are collectively present in the Master Spirits. Whenever the seven Master Spirits unite in the presence of Paradise Deity, there is a temporary manifestation of the Supreme and of the Ultimate and of the Supreme Ultimate. Apparently, the collective function of the Master Spirits is limited to the Master Universe. That's the best
Their names would indicate that too.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. If they function outside the Master Universe, it's only as a part of the deity of the core of the Supreme Creators, which is a part of the Trinity Ultimate, which is a part of the Trinity of Trinities. Indirectly, they'll function infinitely, but only in collective collaboration with others. Then I think this is the farthest I've gone in my thinking on the origin of the Supreme Being. And I draw a parallel between a creative spirit and the Supreme Being. I'm sure they're not the same, but I'm sure that a comprehension of one is helpful to an understanding of the other. They're analogous, but not homologous. And in the appendix on transformative techniques, it's one of the reasons I went into such detailed lengths in discussing the origin of the creative spirit and how she gradually personalizes. I wanted to set up a background, not only for understanding her, but a background for talking about the Supreme Being and the Ultimate. Because they speak of him as a spirit personality and a spirit person, and yet they speak of him as going through a pre-personal period of power-personality unification. And I don't think we have any word that quite is accurate in talking about the Supreme Being, any more than we have a word which is accurate in describing the stages in the personalization of the creative spirit, a becoming personality. I think I get help out of it. I'm sure that when Mike Gill thinks of the Supreme Being, he thinks of him as a person. Because he thinks timeless if he wants to.
How many persons of deity are there now? Quiet now this.
Well, I think.
I don't know. I'll just ask him.
You know what he thinks.
Not comprehensible to us because none of them are right at this minute. How many are there now?
From the time perspective 3, from
right.
the eternity perspective 6. 3 existential that we all would agree on now.
No equivocation there.
An addition of 3 experiential personalizations, which are not real now,
Right,
but from a timeless standpoint would be real.
How about what? How about the Supreme? How about
He's-
4?
No, he's
Not
the Supreme Being would be the 4th personalization of deity.
Right.
Yeah,
All right.
And the first
is he a
person-
person to Michael right now?
I think so.
All right. Then therefore he is a person of deity.
He's
in
not
the
a
universe.
personality.
Not as we would use language. No. As Michael would use language, yes, but not as we would use language. He is not a person of deity to Jesus. He is a person of deity to Michael.
I don't follow.
Well, Clyde, put it this way. Here.
I mean, I follow you, but
All right.
let's go right ahead. Take the next step.
All right, let's put it
Why?
this way.
Why is the spirit anymore?
When I think of Clyde Goodman, I think of him as a man, not as a finality. Because I'm thinking of Clyde Goodman as a time creature, and I'm a time creature. And so we talk and communicate and just get along dandy. But if Mike Gill looked at Clyde Goodman, he might think of him as a finality. A child thinks of another child as a playmate. A parent looks at either child and sees the mature adult growing out of the child. And some of the things which children can't understand in parents is that parents are reacting to children as potential adults, whereas children react to children merely as playmates. When a father looks at his children, and I use the word father and I exclude mother because mothers have 2 viewpoints towards children. They have everything which a father has, and then they have something a father will never know anything about, the maternal feeling, which a mother shares with all mammals, and is a deeper feeling. It goes farther into the marrow of the bones. But I think when a typical male, I'm not talking about an effeminate man now, because they're more like women, but a typical male is afraid of a baby. I mean, the damn thing will break if you aren't careful.
And they're awfully easy to drop.
Yes. A male's love for that child is not for the baby. It is a love for the man to be. It's a strictly non-mammalian, strictly human love. Now, that child's mother has all of that feeling which the father has, but in addition, has a lot of feelings that no normal man ever experienced. No man suckles its young, even though we have the equipment in case of an accidental pregnancy. nature has provided us against even that emergency.
Boy, that is a catastrophe.
Wouldn't it?
Now, you say...
There's nothing more useless than
Do you, what, now there is a differentiation right now between, God the Supreme and God the Ultimate.
oh yes, God the Ultimate is remoter than God the Supreme. He's farther off.
Remoter.
Yeah, it says here,
He's the remotest. He's number 5.
oh, God the Absolute is remoter still. It
Number
says
6.
here, the Creator sons know that the central creation is the real source of that indispensable universe over control which stabilizes and unifies their local universes. They know that the personal presence of the ever-present influence of the Supreme and of the Ultimate is in Havona. Now, you see, when you talk about a creator, you mustn't inflict him with the limitations of a creature. There's no question in my mind but what the Master Spirits in general, and the Seventh Master Spirit in particular, personally know the Supreme and personally know the Ultimate. Because the Seventh Master Spirit speaks for either one or both. The Seventh Master Spirit can speak for the Supreme Ultimate. And the Supreme Ultimate isn't going to come into existence until the
He
Supreme...
ain't even been born, has he?
You got to get them both and then unify them.
Right.
The Supreme Ultimate, to me, is post-Master Universe. So is the Ultimate. You can't get the Ultimate until you finish the Master Universe.
Now, let's differentiate that. You say there are 3 and 3. I say that if there's a child 1 year of age, and I don't care whether you're male or female, that child, with good health, will attain adulthood.
Yes.
And experience.
Right.
You would not deny that child an existence and a personality.
Do?
All right. Why should we deny the existence of the Supreme Being? Now, as a deity personality.
We don't. In our... We do and we don't. Let's put it this way.
That's just what I've been, that's what I've been exposed to.
Let's reckon this way. If we want to be timeless, then there's no reason why the collector of internal revenue should not send tax bills to the unborn generation of tomorrow. Except they can't find them. Don't think they wouldn't if they could find them. There's a host of Americans that are going to be living 100 years from now, and presumably paying taxes. But the American government does not tax them, because to the American government, these beings are not real.
Non-findable.
Right. And yet, by the same line of reasoning, if you can go outside of time, these potential beings are just as real as the actual Americans who live today. Now,
Very good.
Oh, quiet.
I believe that the Supreme Being is real. But when I go through Havona, I'm not going to be able to find him any more than Internal Revenue can find the unborn generations of tomorrow. To me, he's not real. If he were real, I could find him. I'm going to find the Spirit. I'm going to find the Son. I'm going to find the Father. They're actual, contactable, factual. The Supreme Being is a mystery. I'm going to feel him and suspect him. I'm going to get a lot of hunches in my bones, and some of them are going to be correct, too. But I actually can't find him. So I can't classify him as real or unreal. From my perspective, I choose to put him in a gray area that's neither black nor white. And I say, to me, he is a becoming reality. I know he's present, but he's not finished. I don't say that he's here. I don't say that he's not here. Now, to a being who doesn't have my time-space restrictions, like a master spirit. Master spirit can talk to the Supreme Being, but I can't. If we try to use language that's outside of time, we go nuts. Because then we talk about taxing people that aren't born in terms of income which hasn't been earned. And we've got to stick to the past, present, future of time in our thinking, because that's our experience.
To a master spirit, how many persons of deity are there?
5, I think.
Now.
5.
What are they?
Father, Son, Spirit, Supreme, and Ultimate. But not the Absolute.
All right. To mortals, there are 3.
There are 3.
That helps a lot.
To a Creator Son,
How many?
I'm sure there are 4. I'm not sure about their 5.
I get the breakdown. I appreciate
I'm not
it.
sure. I'm
I
uncertain.
like the whole show now.
To God the Father, there are 6. To God the Son, there are 6. To God the Spirit, there are 6.
I like the whole show.
Yeah.
The whole business.
To the architects of the Master Universe,
Depends on who you are.
there are 5 plus.
Well, to me, right now they're 3.5.
About 3.5 is the way I look at it.
But
I got a
let's
terrific-
go on 3.
I got a strong feeling for the reality of the Supreme.
That figure wasn't finished.
I'm real happy.
You know.
I'm real happy. My argument was
Who are you? Where are you talking from? From what perspective?
I quit arguing first.
I just go
Yeah.
back. I just go back to a father's attitude toward a baby. You know the next thing the old man does, go down by him an electric train
Huh?
and then a football
ball.
and a football.
Yeah.
Because he's thinking of that child in future. And a mother has all of that, but she also.
I think the human end of it will fluid end of that.
I read you a section on that. I've got some thinking. No, as I work the math out, this is reasonably close.
If you could tell the whole finite story in about an hour, then on the same relative scale it would take about 10,000 years.
To tell the Absonite story.
That's how much longer it is.
I don't know what 10,000 years is, but I know it's a heck of a lot longer than that.
I mean, I could sort of feel the impact of that's a lot of time over there. See, as long as this is short compared to that.
I was going to do that. 10,000-yard football field of the million-yard football field.
We need to go 2 more fields on from them to complete it. Oh, here I got the wrong book here.
I'm going to read you a couple of pieces from chapter 11. This is after the Master Universe has been all finished. And we're sort of taking inventory and trying to figure out, what's this going to be like? Where do we get off at? Here's a little comment about, let's read about the post-ultimate age. This is after the 6th universe age. We have observed that the universe ages differ quantitatively. They appear to lengthen in time as we follow them in sequence from the second to the. Some of of them also differ qualitatively. The second age is uniquely different from those that follow. This is the age of the growth of the supreme. The four ages of the outer space levels are qualitatively alike. We've called them post-supreme ages. They are the ages of the experiential growth of the ultimate. Now we have reached a new age that differs qualitatively from all that has gone before. It is the post-ultimate age. Suppose that we take inventory of just how it differs from the post-supreme ages. 1. The Master Universe has completed its growth. 2. The Supreme has completed his post-finite, absonite growth. 3. The first experiential Trinity is fully unified. 4. God the Ultimate has finally emerged. 5. The second experiential Trinity is formed as a factual entity. 6. Absonite growth potential has become exhausted. 7. The absonite quest for the Father as ultimate has been completed. There's another respect in which the post-ultimate age will differ from the other universe ages. It apparently has no ending in time. Perhaps we might think of it as the final age. In this respect, it would be like the first age. Both are eternal. The first age has no beginning in time, although it ends in time. The final age has no ending in time, although it begins in time. Post-ultimate epochs. An eternal age does not necessarily mean a gray blur of monotony, of the monotony of endless and unpunctuated time. Something that just goes on and on and on. We believe it likely that the final age will have many epochs that will present successive goals that actually are attainable, but each goal will unfold to reveal a new and more distant goal to be attained. The major divisions of the history of an inhabited world are organized in this way. There are 7 planetary mortal epochs. The 7th epoch is designated the era of light and life, and apparently it goes on and on. But when the papers examine this final epoch in detail, we discover that it is divided into 7 stages. The 7 stages of progressive advancement in the era of light and life. We venture that a more detailed study of the 7th stage of light and life would disclose that it too has subdivisions. Perhaps it is divided into 7 sub-stages of growth. This is how we visualize the post-ultimate age. It is a period of unfolding epochs, each of which will originate and terminate, begin and end, all but the very last one of a given series. This final epoch will always introduce a new series of growth stages that will point to a new horizon of goal attainment. Section 2, the adjustment to eternity. Well,
We wrote another suit of clothes.
that's going to have to be rewoven. I just smelled it burning there. I hate the smell of burning flesh, don't you? The papers tell us that when mortal ascenders in the second age pass through the final transit sleep between the inner Havona circuit and the Isle of Paradise, they become the children of eternity. Then they are no longer creatures of time. This seems like a reasonable introduction to the quality of eternity, but hardly an adequate basis for a comprehension of the quantity of eternity. We would suggest that a feeling for the quantity of eternity grows in the consciousness of mortals, ascenders, and finalators as a slow process. We believe that this process starts right here and now. Consider the following line of reasoning. Objective time by the clock, is one thing. It goes on 60 seconds to the minute and 60 minutes to the hour, day after day, never changing. Subjective time in our consciousness,
is something very different. This sort of time is a variable, not a constant. When we are bored, time drags. When we're having pleasure, time is speeded up. It passes quickly. Subjective time varies from day to day, depending on what we are doing and how we feel. But it also exhibits a long-term trend. It goes faster the longer we live. This is because we interpret subjective time. We evaluate it. We feel this kind of time, and we feel it in terms of how long we have lived. We also feel it in terms of how far ahead we can look with feeling into the future. When a human being has lived for 40 years or so, he can look back into the past at least 30 years with remembrance. This equips him to look forward for an equal amount of time. He has a feeling for a time span of 30 years. This gives him a time base of 60 years with which to evaluate the passing present moment, 30 years back plus 30 years forward. From this standpoint, our ability to comprehend time and to deal with time is growing at twice the rate of the actual passage of time, the passage of time by the clock. This is reflected in the long-term change in our feeling for time in our consciousness. This kind of time seems to go faster as we grow older. A summer vacation is a small slice out of eternity to a 10-year-old. 3 months is a rather short time to a person of 40. We've all had this experience. There's nothing new about it. But what may surprise us is the doubling up of this rate of change after fusion with the adjuster. We are informed that, among other things, the adjuster contributes to the partnership something that is called experience and memory of past eternity. Now let us consider an ascender just a little while after he's fused with his adjuster. Here is all of this unending memory of past eternity and experience that is suddenly open to his consciousness. What can he do about it? We believe that he will be able to absorb only as much of this as he has capacity to absorb. In other words, how much time has he consciously experienced? If he's on the mansion world and is 1,000 years old, then he should be able to comprehend 1,000 years of past eternity experience and memory from the adjuster. If he can do this, then he can reach back 2,000 years into the past. This should give him a feeling for an equal length of future time. He now has a 4,000-year time base with which to deal with time. 2,000 years in the past plus 2,000 years in the future. But this ascender has consciously lived for only 1,000 years. This means that his feeling for time, his ability to evaluate the present in terms of the past future, is growing at 4 times the rate of the actual passage of time. We submit the theory that finite creatures are completely time-bound only to the extent that they are completely imprisoned within the present moment. We begin to escape from the limitations of time as we are able to associate the present moment with more of the past and the future. As we draw on the past for experience, as we forecast the consequences of conduct into the future, and as we combine these estimates of the past-future into wisdom which is exercised in the making of present decisions that lead to action in the present. If there is any merit to this line of reasoning, then we as human beings are escaping from time at a rate that is twice as great as the passage of time. As adjuster-fused ascenders, our rate of escape may be doubled. It will be 4 times as fast as the passage of time.
when we are 1,000,000 years old, we should have a time base, a past-future comprehension, that is 4,000,000 years. When we are 1,000,000,000,000 years old as the Andrometer Nebula that gave origin to our sun, we will have a 4,000,000,000,000-year time base. When we enter the post-ultimate age, we may be 5,000,000,000,000 times as old as Andrometer. 5,000,000,000,000 trillions of years old. We should then have a time comprehension that is 4 times as great as this. This is the age that we have calculated for the entire master universe. 5,000,000,000,000 trillions of years. And when we have lived through it, we should be able to comprehend something that is 4 times as long. If we can grow in our comprehension of time at a rate that is 4 times as fast as the actual passage of time, then given a long enough time, even the quantity of eternity is going to become partially comprehensible. At least it will be a good deal less formidable.
Well, you're using a geometrical ratio on that.
Yeah. I think we've all experienced that, haven't we? I mean, a month isn't so long anymore, is it? To me, it's a heck of a short time.
Of course, I'm still pretty young.
I know. Well, purchase will come in later years. But I just
Well,
think
now, if you stay with that, if you want to, I mean, technically, if you stay with that, there'll be a moment when you should comprehend right on back past prior to where you started reading to us to the 11 o'clock. And that's just a little too classification far.
You mean the post-zero age, the pre-zero?
Pre-zero age. You take that mathematical progression, and we're only 2/3. Wait a minute now, Bert. Wait just a minute. You start with where we are. 3/4 down, stage 2. And you go on into stage 6 and see where you multiply that by 4, and where that'll shoot you to going backwards. Shoot you right way past.
the only
zero.
catch is, Clyde, that when you enter the first universe age, there is no beginning. So you just go farther and farther back in the first universe age.
Well, you'll hit that circle a million.
That's right.
You'll hit that circle a million times a second.
Yes, you will. But you're dealing with something that has no beginning, so there's plenty of room to go back. But we'll get quite a ways into it someday.
Mathematically, you're gonna get a long ways back.
Oh, just so you don't hit that top
You're
circle.
increasing pretty fast.
I'll tell you one thing, when they get in the first level, they'll never be able to tell them what they're telling us now.
That's right.
They're telling us there never was a time when this didn't exist. We won't be able to say that
No,
today.
that's right. Because they live in transcendent time. Whatever
That's
that
gonna
may
be
be.
rough, isn't it?
It'd be hard to explain.
Sure will.
Yeah. We'll understand it, but they won't. And we'll make mysterious statements like Jesus made when he said, "He who has seen me has seen the Father," and that's had people scratching their heads for a long time.
Before Abraham was,
I am, yes. Well, he came out here about 400 billion years ago, and that's considerably before Brother Abraham saw daylight. Section 4 in this chapter is entitled The Capacities of Finaliters. You know, we're out there, we've left the baseball diamond now, really. I thought a good idea to take inventory to see if we're equipped to play in this game. You know, you got to have jacks or better, or you don't have openers. What are the prospects of the finaliters in the post-ultimate age? The age in which all finite growth and all absonite growth is finished and done with. The mortal finaliters have come a long way
from the Paradise Ascent in the second age, the quest for a finite comprehension of the Universal Father. They have grown and progressed through the post-supreme ages, through the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth universe ages, all the way through to the completion of the Master Universe, the emergence of the ultimate, the finding of the Universal Father as an ultimate experience, and the final exhaustion of all absonite growth potential. What are their prospects for still further growth? And now the question of further growth is really formidable. After finite and absonite growth is finished, then all relative growth is finished. All that could possibly remain is absolute growth. We submit that the prospects for the finaliters are good. There's not a great deal of evidence for this in the papers, but there is quite enough to give good support to this opinion. The finaliters have the potential for unending growth. First of all, they have personality, which they've received from God. And such a personality has capacity for expression and growth on the finite level. It also has capacity for expression on the absonite level. And it finally has the capacity to penetrate the absolute level, not to encompass this level, but to penetrate it and grow there. And besides this, a finaliter has fused with a fragment of God. When an adjuster fuses with an ascending mortal, the adjuster contributes to the fused being an element of absoluteness. This absoluteness is, at the time of fusion, a potential quality that can hardly be realized immediately, but it will surely be realized in the distant future. This absoluteness is limited or qualified as to extent. We deduce that this potential absoluteness is limited as to quantity of external self-expression, but not as to quality of internal self-realization. These two endowments, one inherent in personality, the other deriving from the adjuster, both come from God, so it is not belief, beyond belief, that each could carry the potential for absolute growth. We accordingly deduce that the finaliters certainly do have the capacity to grow in the post-ultimate age. We further deduce that nothing can ever stop their growth. We finally deduce that they will never complete all growth possible in this age from a quantitative standpoint. They will never reach the end of all growth. Finaliters appear to have the capacity to attain a destiny that is qualitatively absolute, but not quantitatively infinite. We believe that they are destined to find God as absolute, but never to know all of God as absolute. Always more and ever more, but never all. You want football field?
Well, I think Bill
Can you hear it again?
John and Golda will. Well, I can listen to it 2-3 times today.
Well, this is section 5. The adjustment to infinity, an analogy. We advance the opinion that the adjustment to infinity, like the adjustment to eternity, is a slow process. We do not suddenly look out over some starry expanse at some distant moment and say, well, so this is infinity at last. We have the belief that we will slowly become used to infinity, although we may be quite well aware of the milestones that will mark our progress from the finite to the superfinite. When we deal with words that have no meaning, words like absolute and eternal and infinite, we will do well to sacrifice fact for truth. Better that we develop a little actual feeling for these concepts than drowned in a flood of ponderous language. With this thought in mind, the following story is offered as a concept symbol that may possibly add something to our feeling for the way in which a finite creature might become adjusted to infinity. Suppose that you're a young chap, a student at some fine university. It's a grand experience. You have the feeling of growing and of reaching out into new fields of knowledge and accomplishment. And one of the things that you most enjoy there is football. The school has a very good team, and it's no easy job to become a member, to win your letter as a member of this team. You show up faithfully for practice every day without fail. You work very hard to develop real skill. In time, you qualify for the second team, then as a substitute on the first team. And finally, you win a coveted position as a first-string member of the team itself. It has been a long time